Hello, everyone again. This is Moritz Bierling again, Director of Research at Exosphere. And with me today, I have Andrés Ochoa. He is
Ochoa.
Ochoa, important, yes. Portuguese.
Actually, it's Spanish, but it's fine.
It's actually Spanish. Right, you're from Colombia, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he's from Colombia, as we know. And he is with me today because he is an entrepreneur, a scientist, and a biohacker or I'm not sure whether you actually like that term, but that's what some people use to describe it. Yeah, okay, because some people don't really like it. They prefer more like the biology person or a grinder or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's okay. And we are going to talk about his career a little bit, because it's interesting, the intersection of science and entrepreneurship, how that combines. And then also about his views on how science, what state science is in today, and how people who don't really have like an Ivy League education can get into it, perhaps, and what he's doing in that area. So he started off, or what I know about him is that he worked in science, and he did a startup at was it SyntechBio?
Yeah, SyntechBio is a fund of acceleration in the United States. So they give you funding for opening companies.
Right, and you did the Arcturus BioCloud.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think that's interesting.
Okay. Well, just continue what you said. I have a formal training in biology and bioinformatics. So I did a PhD in that area, and I finished it like a couple of years ago. I was interested on going forward into building stuff. I'm not that much of a scientist with questions. I like more applications. So I know there's a lot of science and a lot of tools that we could use, and I wanted to try to have like the experience of using them for creating a product and a company, and something that could actually get to the people. That was my main interest, because I was a little tired of academics, because everything goes so slow. Right. So in the entrepreneurship world is a little more fluid. So you get some money, you try to test your idea, you try to take it to market, you get feedback from the people and in the problem you are trying to solve. And I wanted to solve problems with what I was training on, which was molecular biology and genetics. So looking into that, like 2 years ago, with my co-founders, we met. They are from different areas, and I always have been happy to talk to people from different areas, because I think there's where you can actually build different stuff. So I met a group of people from different areas, and they wanted also to invest in biotech, but they didn't have like a clear idea. So we keep on talking about what problems we see. And the main problem that I figured out, because I was working on this, I had been working with this for 10 years already, is that much of the biology and biotech we do it by hand. So we do it all the experiments person by person and pipetting by hand. And for me, it doesn't make any sense to do it that way. If you see any other industry, like the automobilist industry, for example, or any industry of manufacture, they already automate the process, and they do everything using machines. So, and these are processes that could be, if you think about really, it's really less complex of what we do in biology, because you are like using hundreds of reactions, of chemistry reactions with enzymes and all the variables that are happening into a cell. So it's a really a lot of stuff that you are trying to actually understand. And if we don't automate it and we don't do it in a high scale, we won't be able to actually understand how biology works. So the idea was to try to make all the work we do in the labs, do it automated. So we build robots, we build machines. We wanted to do it in the United States. I'm from Colombia, but I have been living for a while in Brazil. And United States is a really interesting ecosystem, because how things happen really fast. So we were in the middle of a crisis here in Brazil of money a couple of years ago, like 2-3 years ago. Now it's getting better. So we decided to look for a foreign investment. And in the United States, even because some of the infrastructure we needed is not so available in South America. So the idea was we went there and we began to apply to look for funding, and we got funding from a venture capital that is called SOS Ventures, and they have different accelerators to incubate companies, and one of those accelerators is SyntechBio in California. So through SyntechBio, SOS Ventures invested into our company around 100K, so we could move there and actually began the process, which is really cool because we have access to a lot of infrastructure and things like that. Also, it's a little tricky because California is really expensive place to be. So you have like to balance the pros and the cons of going abroad and going to a place like Silicon Valley, for example.
Right. Interesting. So you took the company there, you started the process of developing your product, and then it was a success, I guess, because...
Kind of. That's the word like
Tell
that.
me more.
Yeah. So, like, I talk a lot to people which are in the field of science and they want to go into entrepreneurship. And a good thing is that it's not so different, actually. Like, if you think so, if you have a product that you said, you have to build something and you have to test it. You have to test if there's actually a market, if actually your solution is what the clients want, because I loved my idea and I think it's really useful, but it does not mean that that's what everybody wants. And if you have a business, you have to listen to your clients. So that's what we did. We built a prototype and we launched it online last year around March. And the idea was that it was pretty interesting because with my co-founders, we discussed how was the best way to do this automation of the technology. And for example, they have a background in robotics and software and administration, for example, the CEO. So they were also looking into software, and we decided that the best way was to put this infrastructure available to the public through the cloud. So we launched online as services that plugged you to our machines, and at the beginning we did a kind of simple test, which was just to extract DNA and put it into a bacteria, and the bacteria is going to change color because of the new DNA, and was kind of test to see if there was traction or not. So we launched it like more than a year ago, was around April or May of 2015. And we have a lot of traction. There was a lot of people that were subscribing to the website. We ran a lot of tests, and it was an interesting idea. So it looked like there's a lot of people interested in this. The problem at that moment was that the people that wanted to actually do something with this technology, they didn't have much knowledge about what to do. And this is a pretty new technology in the sense that we're still beginning to understand how to build stuff. So normally most people spend a lot of years trying to figure out and doing the experiments, because you can in not much time to get to know the theory. But the handling of the stuff is really hard. Right. So we were happy to open like this technology to people who probably have some idea and some resources to understand online, for example, the things that we did, but they didn't want to spend years in a laboratory learning how to do it by hand.
Right.
Anyways, because and even because I don't think that's the future for any of these technologies, so it does not make much sense. It's pretty interesting because you learn a lot. So you learn how to debug, take out the bugs in your project, like where things are not working. If you have a really experience on the bench, we call that, because you were working the bench, you can like figure out what is going on wrong and fix it if you have that experience. But at the beginning, if you standardize on stuff, much people could do it, but they need like the knowledge, and that was one of the first problems we had. You have a lot of people who were interested in, but they didn't know much. And even if they do, this is still kind of expensive. So we could do that insertion of a gene in a bacteria for $50, which was not much. And for a person who wants to try it, it will try it. But the idea of this whole technology is that to do something like express a protein. And we began to implement the cycle, and was too expensive for a hobbyist or a person who is beginning to study this. So then we move out from that market and we went to another market, and we keep on trying on that.
Right, but you touched earlier on an interesting subject, which is that business that isn't so different from science, that it's actually not, of course, you deal more with people, or at least
sure.
That's what you think, but there are still some regularities, some patterns that you see, and it's basically, again, it's testing. It's the scientific application of scientific mindset to the market and testing whether something works, but just that the feedback and the way that you find out whether something works is very different, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was one of my first surprises, because I was not expecting that. I was like, all right, let's see how this works. My family had already had businesses, but I had when I was a child, but I never figure out that maybe what I learned doing science or having a scientific mindset actually could be applied. And I think that once you get into market and try to test in a startup products and things like that, it's really useful if you know how to do experiment, how to have controls, and actually to ask stuff and try it really fast, because that's a problem on science. People are trying to build something that can take years, and when they actually build it, nobody wants it, or it's not the best solution. So maybe it's better to begin from the other end, try to understand better what we could actually build.
Right. Some people write a paper and then maybe nobody reads that actually ever. And then some people build a product and maybe nobody uses it. It's not that different. It's true.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
But how did you get into science? I mean, you said that you worked in it from the beginning, and then first from there you moved into entrepreneurship. But how did you get started?
Well, I'm 30 years old right now, and I began my undergrad when I was my graduate school. I did microbiology when I was 17. So I have been working in a lab, really in a lab for more than 10 years already. And what moved me was the beginning, you finish high school and you have no idea what to do, and probably we already don't have any idea what we want to do. Yeah, but I really like it, biotechnology. At that time, I'm talking about more than 10 years ago, around 15 years ago, biotechnology was really something sci-fi, like a movie, everybody talking about genes. I love computers already and software, and I knew a little bit, but this biotech stuff was really sci-fi to me, and I love sci-fi movies and comics. And I was I love that, and I was really fan of chemistry. I used to have chemistry in classes, and I was really bad at chemistry, but I love it. So I say, all right, I hear about biotech, and I think that's what I wanted to do. And then I began to pursue that. But it was really new at that moment, at least in my country. So for example, in my university, we didn't have much classes of molecular biology, for example. So I had to have some access because I began to work with virology. So it was more with graduate students, undergraduate students that were doing masters. So I was going to meetings with these guys and actually learning about this, because in the normal day-to-day classes in the university, you don't get that information. It was really new. So I began to pursue it because of that.
Interesting. And over the time, the course of your career, you've worked in many different settings. I saw that you were at Stanford as well.
In Stanford, what I did is I also, I have a PhD and all the formal education for more than 10 years. And I think that things are going to change dramatically in the future because of internet. So I think that our education that's not following probably, or is beginning to try to follow what must be education right now because of the access to information you have now online. And one of my first experience actually was doing a class in Stanford online. That's why because I was already beginning to think about entrepreneurship, And a friend of mine, which is a guy from Germany, who is also a really nice person and also moved into stuff of biotech and this stuff, he told me, there's a class in Stanford and maybe we can do a group with a couple of people and do the final project and do the class. I say, yeah, sure, sounds great. So that was my first class online. I do it through a laboratory in Stanford. And the idea of them was try to begin to move scientists from the mindset of science to entrepreneurship. It was really focused on software, but most of the things that we learned are applicable in any kind of business. So that was one of the places.
Right. You spoke earlier about that in the US you had access to a lot of infrastructure that was not available to you in Latin America. So
yeah.
I know that you're, of course, very active in promoting biotech and sciences in Latin America, and you're also the founder of the SyntechBio, the biohacker network.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, well, one of the things I have moved through Latin America. I also lived for a while in Argentina. I have been living in Brazil for 10 years and Colombia. And I really feel like we should come together and try to work together. There's a little barrier between Brazil and the rest of Latin America because of the language. I speak Portuguese, so I have not much trouble, and I think it's not hard at all. But for me, there's also a concept that does not make any sense anymore, which is the concept of country. I don't believe that country and somebody said, your country is from here to here, make any sense right now. It's because of all the economics and how everything moves. So I really aim to be like we should have like just one place and everybody can go wherever they please. That's what I think so. But anyways, like I share a lot of feelings with all the Latin American community, and I know that all the travels we got doing science around Latin America. So one of the first things that I have tried myself for a while is try to help the ecosystem in South America and Latin America to actually get access to this technology, because first we always are upset in South America about the access to technology and how expensive it is. But if we wanted to make it cheaper, we need to build it ourselves. That's kind of the first point. And the second one is like in the history is pretty interesting because every time the technologies are getting more accessible to everybody. So if you think about this, the second industrial revolution, it took a really while to get to South America. But now with software, you see that these gaps are really getting smaller. And I think we can do that with biotechnology because we have a lot of research already in place in South America and Latin America. But we need a little more mindset to turn this into a more profitable technology that we actually could build something that help us in local problems.
Right.
So I align myself with that, and in order to do that, I create a SyntechBio network in which we try to help people to create what we call biohacker spaces, which is actually just a place for prototyping using biology. Because the problem with this technology right now is that it's a little closed. It's inside the universities. It's actually as computers at the beginning, big computers in rooms with nobody have access. So the idea is like a way to maybe try to accelerate the ecosystem of biotech is to have a lot of places where you can actually go and try to build something, just like a maker place with a 3D printer. So that's why I created SyntechBio, and I'm happy to say that I met really interesting people along the way from different countries. So we're really a good network right now with around 8 to 10 groups of all Latin America working on. And also my company was a little inspired, at least from my point of view on that, because we wanted to digitalize biology from the point of view that you can access to cloud. But the intention also was that will help companies and people from South America to have access to the infrastructure we have physical in the United States through the cloud. So my work most of the time try to align on that principle, try to make smaller the gap we have of getting that technology to work in Latin America.
Right, using the tools we have available in this information age to break down some of the barriers that are there that actually don't need to be there. It just needs somebody to take them down.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you talked about that you think that the way that we do education is out of date and that there's a new way that we can do that.
Yeah,
Now, at Exosphere, we've been experimenting with ways to do it in a
that's
new
cool.
fashion, and quite
That's why I
recently
like you
we
guys.
exactly. I remember when Skinner told me he met you, and you guys had a lot of stuff in common, I think. But yeah, we recently experimented with our new model that was a radical break from our previous model, which was kind of the bootcamp model that you see a lot in the entrepreneurship circles. And we kind of broke from that and started something new where we take that bootcamp model, and instead of having everybody do the same thing and be part of the same groups, we break them up into individual smaller groups that each have one fellow, like kind of the teacher role, who learns from these, who teaches these students. And then at the same time, they are connected to all the other groups, all the other individuals through a core curriculum. So they kind of have a community experience where they work together, they collaborate, they work across these groups, across these divides, but at the same time, they learn one specific skill or field of expertise where they can dig deep and kind of get a real skill that then is also something that people will pay them for in the creative economy. So it's kind of taking that barbell approach. And what are your thoughts on how the education of the future looks like? Because one other thing that I've kind of thought about is that now that information is so readily available, it's not anymore about having access to information, but to know that this information that I'm learning is actually good, useful, and valuable to me. And so the role of the teacher or of the educator is not anymore so much in just providing the information, but in curating information and helping people make sense of it.
Yeah, and totally agree with you. I think like most people get a little angry with me when I say what I think. So I'm gonna try to be as gentle as I can. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I did the full ride in the academics. You know, more than 10 years on academics. I have students. I have all the whole stuff going on. And one of the things that for me is pretty clear of what you said is like education has, from my point of view, has two really strong basis. One is to get like a critical spirit about, because as you said, we have a lot of information right now, but you had to learn how to think logically about this information and how to actually know what you believe and what is interesting for you to know. So the critical experience, that was something that I think was really valuable to me. That was the most valuable thing that I learned through my PhD, how to have a critical way of thinking and not just to believe whatever the people say, but also try to understand why the things were like that. That's interesting, and I think that's a real value still in the education, even the model we have already. But the other component is something that is a little out of, it's outdated already for our normal education. Our normal education sometimes does not get to pointing to skills. And that's a point that you mentioned, and I think it's pretty interesting, pretty important right now, because there's a lot of skills. The world is changing really fast. So a lot of works, a lot of things that you could do to get money, like if you want to pay to day-to-day basis, they are disappearing. We're having companies trying to implement, for example, self-driving cars. So you can still thinking about that. If you know how to drive, maybe you're gonna get some money because of Uber, because that won't happen in a couple of years anymore.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that are coming really fast. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say, you know, a software is eating the world, and that's true. Most of our activities are containing different kind of softwares. Right. And software and maybe biotechnology until a certain point, not yet, but we hope in the future, it's gonna be skill sets that you're gonna be able to learn by yourself, as you learn right now how to code Python or Ruby or whatever you want. So I think that right now is really valuable to focus on skill sets that will help people to actually go through these changes and right. help them to actually find jobs in new areas, and also not be so fragile about the changes that our world is gonna face, because this right. is happening. There's nothing else to do. Like a personal example of that, mm-hmm. as I told you, I have been quite interested on online education lately. And from my area expertise, genomics and biotech, and also did a lot of work on programming and data analysis initially, but it was really, I learned by myself practically. And now I'm trying to move in a more curate idea in the way that I'm by myself right now studying online machine learning and Python for programming the algorithms and this kind of stuff, data science, because I want to apply that on biotechnology. And there's not much people actually in the world right now doing machine learning for genomics. It's a little few people, but that's going to be a huge, I hope so, it's going to be a huge field, because only machine learning will help us really to understand the complexity of this kind of information.
Right.
And if I look anywhere how to learn that, there's a lot of information online. And there's a lot of interesting people you can talk to. And then the teacher, how you said it, it's going to be more a person who has a little more knowledge than you, is going to point you into the right directions. And it's going to tell you, you know, this could be like that. And it's going to be more a partner than a teacher. Right. And there's more horizontal communication in that point, you know. And I think that education is moving towards that. And I'm experienced myself. I already have my PhD and all the stuff. I'm not tired of studying, because I started skill sets that interested me to do something. And that changed a lot how you face education when you're really trying to learn something and you can do something with that.
Right, that's interesting. I mean, we talk also a lot about the value of lifelong learning and really taking that mindset that education does not stop with school, rather is a lifelong task. I mean, as long as you're solving problems and you're engaging with the world, you're always learning something new. But people have often this mindset that, which I think comes from this US American script of the first half of the 20th century, which is if you study and you work hard, then you're going to be fine and you're going to get a pension at the end and like everything's fine. So like you can leave your thinking with the system and just do the thing that you are supposed to do and then you'll be fine. But in today's world where we have all these sudden changes due to, as you say, software eating the world, it takes a little bit more individual kind of awareness and the foresight to make sure that you stay relevant in the job market. But one aspect that I think is not often emphasized is the value and utility of community, because lots of people don't know how to deal with this and they don't feel comfortable dealing with it alone. And so they kind of look for people who help them. And all too often, I see them following a bunch of thought leaders in various industries and kind of modeling their behavior. But that doesn't help them as much when they actually try to go out and get a job in these fields, because what they actually have to do is connect with people who are in there and get comfortable with them and see whether they can find opportunities that are available. And so I think the value of communities that focus on helping these people do their thing or supporting them is often not appreciated.
Well, I think by myself also looking into my experience, actually that was one of the hardest things to do for me, because, you know, like I have a profile of a person who likes a lot of technical challenges. Mm-hmm. Even that I have a really social consciousness. Right. But for me, it's hard to go around talking to people. For example, I prefer to stay by myself in the laboratory and pass hours with my computer, and that's how I am. Right. So for me, that movement that I had to adapt myself to do, because in the business world, you have to talk to people, you have to get networking, you have to get related to people, because sometimes they can be your clients, they can be your investors, they can be your partners for a business idea. So for me, it was really hard, like, get myself into that mindset, because business is not only about numbers or about technical knowledge, but there's also a lot of soft skills that you need to learn to. And sometimes it's hard to talk to people or talk in public, and even more if it's not your native language, which is most of the cases, because normally you're trying to do business in another place. So for me, it was really hard at the beginning, and I had to adapt to that. And I think that that the value of a community to help you to like broke that barriers that you have, and also to get connected to the opportunities is really valuable. It's one of the things. It doesn't matter if you are really the greatest scientist or you're a really good guy if nobody knows it, and if nobody wants to work with you because you're kind of pain in the ass. So you have to learn how to manage with other people and how to make it easy for everybody to work together.
Exactly. One more thing before we kind of break. There is, we already touched on the value of lifelong learning and the value of being able to relate to people. But there's one more thing that that we talk a lot about at Exosphere, which is accounting. And it's not necessarily only accounting in the regular sense, like the normal accounting of profit and loss and these kind of credit and debit and stuff, but rather using the mindset of accounting of looking over what you experience and then seeing where patterns emerge and then make sure that everything works out, everything fits together. And how I use this in my personal life is by writing in a journal every morning, where I take a paper and like I write in, okay, this is what happened to me yesterday. How do I feel about it? Is there something I want to change in the future? And in this way, I'm doing some kind of mental accounting. I'm looking over my experiences, seeing, okay, is this a good thing? Was this a bad thing? How did I react to it? Was it the right way? And that way I can kind of analyze my own actions and then improve for the future. My question to you is, do you do something similar, or like, do you have some kind of way of operating or some daily routine or some way that you go through what you're doing and try to improve?
Okay.
Or is it more of a natural process for you? You don't really have like, okay, this is the thing that I do.
Maybe one thing that I like to do is like I try to understand the logic behind everything, like how it works. So for example, in business, I see what people does and what they get for that. You know, like as you said, for example, I have had business with people that is really successful or not, and I see, for example, these patterns of behavior that they have, how they relate to clients or how they relate to investors or how they organize their day around how to do stuff like efficiently. So what I do most is I try to learn from people. I think was one of the points. I like to see how they do stuff and then see, because that's already a test. So I know if they are doing this and they already have something or not, probably is because of that. And then I test it on myself and see if it works or not when I try to accomplish something.
Science, you're running experiments in a way.
Yeah, but I don't have I think it's a really nice habit to write down stuff. I don't do it much, but I think a lot about things. I'm running, sometimes I go run and think about that. So I really think a lot about everything that is happening. But what I'm trying to understand is not the details, but the patterns, how everything works, and then try to apply and I see if it's working or not.
Right. Okay, cool. Thanks for your time. I'm sure we'll meet each other in Brazil. And until then, have a good time.
All right, thank you.
Tuning out.
Bye.